My imaginary friend isn't so imaginary anymore, and I'm terrified. The first time I saw Silas again, I was staring at a goddamn coffee stain blooming on my otherwise pristine Wacom tablet. It was a Tuesday. Graphic design deadlines loomed. Sarah was working late. The usual. I hadn't thought about Silas in decades, not since I was a kid. Then, there he was. Just a flicker in the periphery. A shadow elongated wrong, a distorted reflection in the dark screen. I blinked. Gone. Coffee stain still there, mocking me. Stress, I muttered, rubbing my eyes. Just stress. I downed the rest of my lukewarm latte, the bitter taste doing little to settle the knot forming in my stomach. I'd been sleeping like crap lately, plagued by these vague, unsettling dreams I couldn't quite recall. The next day, it happened again. This time, I was reaching for a book on my shelf. A collection of Art Deco posters, my usual comfort read. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him standing in the doorway, a gaunt, impossibly tall figure shrouded in shadow. He wasn't fully there, more like a glitch in reality, a static-filled image on a broken screen. This time, I didn't blink. I stared, and the shape resolved itself just a little more, a hint of a too-wide grin, eyes that seemed to absorb all the light in the room. Then Sarah walked in. "Everything okay, Elias? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a laugh. Just tired. Long day. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, didn't press it. She made me dinner, insisted I take a break from work, but the image of Silas lingered, burned into the back of my retinas. That night, the sleep paralysis returned. It had been years since I'd experienced it, but there I was, pinned to the bed, unable to move, a crushing weight on my chest. And in the darkness, I heard a whisper. "Elias." It was a voice I hadn't heard in years, but I knew it instantly. A distorted, echoing sound, like a record played backward. Silas. I finally managed to break free, gasping for air, my heart hammering against my ribs. Sarah stirred beside me, mumbled something incoherent, and went back to sleep. I lay there, rigid, staring into the darkness, convinced I wasn't alone. The following week, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Holloway, my therapist. I tried to explain what was happening, the hallucinations, the sleep paralysis, the voice. I downplayed the Silas part, framing it as a resurgence of childhood anxieties. Dr. Talk. Holloway listened patiently, her expression a careful blend of concern and professional detachment. "It sounds like you're experiencing a significant increase in anxiety, Elias. And the imagery could be a manifestation of repressed childhood memories." She prescribed a mild anti-anxiety medication and suggested some mindfulness exercises. It felt insufficient. The medication did nothing. The mindfulness exercises just made me feel more aware of the lurking presence in the back of my mind. Silas was getting stronger. One afternoon, while I was working, a framed photo on my desk, a picture of Sarah and me on vacation, crashed to the floor. The glass shattered, sending shards everywhere. I jumped, knocking over my coffee again, the dark liquid spreading across my desk like an oil slick. That was the first time I considered that maybe, just maybe, Silas wasn't just in my head. I started researching imaginary friends. I know, it sounds ridiculous. But I was desperate. I trawled through academic papers, psychology forums, even obscure websites dedicated to the paranormal. Most of it was garbage, New Age nonsense about spirit guides and astral projections. But every now and then, I'd find something that resonated, a story of a childhood companion that lingered, a presence that blurred the lines between imagination and reality. One article, buried deep in an online archive, mentioned a phenomenon called Tulpa, a thought form brought into existence through focused intention and belief. The idea was that if you concentrated hard enough on something, you could actually create it. The thought chilled me to the bone. Had I created Silas? And if so, could I uncreate him? I decided to visit my mother. She lived in a small, cluttered house outside of Portland, surrounded by overgrown gardens and the ghosts of her memories. Her memory wasn't what it used to be, but I hoped she might remember something, anything, about Silas. "Silas?" She squinted at me, her brow furrowed. "Oh, you mean your friend? The one you used to play with in the woods?" "Yes," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What do you remember about him?" Her eyes glazed over, lost in the fog of the past. "He was tall, always smiling. You two were inseparable. But there was something not quite right about him." "What do you mean?" I pressed. She shook her head, her hand trembling. "I don't know, dear. Just a feeling. He used to make me nervous. And then you stopped playing with him. You wouldn't talk about him anymore." "Why?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She looked at me, her eyes suddenly sharp and clear. "I don't remember, Elias. It's all gone." Before I left, I asked her about the old house, the one I grew up in before we moved to the city. It had been torn down years ago, after my father died. I never really understood what happened. She was always vague about it. "They're building condos there now," she said, her voice flat. Said the land was prime real estate. As I drove back to Portland, I couldn't shake the feeling that my mother was holding something back. Something important. Something about Silas. That night, the nightmares were worse than ever. I was back in the old house, the air thick with the smell of mildew and decay. Silas was there too, standing in the shadows, his grin wider than ever, his eyes burning like coals. He beckoned me closer. "Come on, Elias," he whispered. "We have so much to catch up on." I woke up screaming, covered in sweat. Sarah held me, her face etched with concern. "Elias, this is getting out of hand," she said. "You need to do something. See a doctor. Get help." I knew she was right, but I also knew that no doctor could help me with Silas. The next day, I drove out to the site of my old house. It was a mess of construction equipment and half-finished buildings. The air was thick with dust and the roar of machinery. A group of construction workers stood around, smoking and talking. I found the foreman, a burly man with a hard hat and a clipboard. "Excuse me," I said. "I used to live here, in the old house." He looked at me skeptically. "Yeah? Well, it's all different now. We're building the Riverview Estates, luxury living at its finest." "Did you find anything unusual when you were excavating?" I asked. He shrugged. "Just the usual crap. Old pipes, some rusted metal. Nothing interesting," I persisted. "What about bones or anything ritualistic?" He laughed. "Hey, buddy, I think you've been watching too many horror flicks. We're building condos, not summoning demons." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something felt wrong. The air was heavy, oppressive. I could feel Silas watching me, his presence a cold weight on my skin. As I was about to leave, I noticed one of the workers staring at me. He was younger than the others, with a nervous look in his eyes. He gestured for me to come closer. "Hey," he said, his voice low. "I heard what you were asking about finding something strange." I nodded, my heart pounding. "We did find something," he said. "A box, buried deep underground. The foreman told us to just get rid of it." "What was in it?" I asked, my voice trembling. He hesitated. "I don't know. I didn't see. But it looked old. And I swear I heard something moving inside. That was it. I knew. Whatever was in that box, whatever they had unearthed, it was connected to Silas." That night, Silas spoke to me again, not in a whisper this time, but in a clear, resonant voice that echoed inside my skull. "You know what you have to do, Elias," he said. "You have to come back. You have to bring me what is mine." I tried to resist, to tell him to go away, to leave me alone. But his voice was too strong, too persuasive. It was like a hypnotic command, overriding my will. I found myself driving back to the construction site, the city lights receding behind me. The site was deserted, the only sound the wind whistling through the unfinished buildings. I climbed over the fence and made my way to the excavation site. The hole where they had found the box was still there, a dark, gaping maw in the earth. I stood at the edge, peering into the darkness. I could feel Silas's presence growing stronger, the air crackling with unseen energy. "What do you want?" I shouted into the darkness. "What is it you want from me?" Silas's voice echoed back, amplified by the emptiness. "I want what you promised me, Elias. I want your soul." My blood ran cold. I had no memory of making any such promise. But I knew, deep down, that Silas wasn't lying. I felt a hand on my shoulder. I screamed and spun around. Sarah stood there, her face pale but determined. Elias, what are you doing here? She asked. I followed you. I was so worried. Sarah, you have to leave, I said, my voice frantic. It's not safe here. Not without you, she said, her grip tightening on my arm. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper. A figure began to emerge from the hole, slowly, agonizingly, as if being pulled from another dimension. It was Silas. But he wasn't the shadowy figure I had seen in my apartment. He wasn't the distorted reflection in the darkness. He was something else. Tall, impossibly tall, his limbs elongated and grotesque. His skin was stretched tight over his bones, the color of old parchment. His eyes were black pits, devoid of light. And his grin was a jagged, horrifying slash across his face, revealing rows upon rows of needle-sharp teeth. Sarah gasped, stumbling backward. What? What is that? Silas ignored her. He focused on me, his eyes burning with malevolent intent. You promised me, Elias, he said, his voice a guttural rasp. Now it's time to pay up. He reached out a long skeletal hand, his fingers twitching, eager to grasp me. I didn't know what to do. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move, unable to speak. Sarah screamed. She grabbed a piece of broken concrete from the ground and threw it at Silas. It hit him in the chest, but he didn't even flinch. He turned his gaze on her, his eyes narrowing. A low growl rumbled in his chest. No, I shouted, finally breaking free from my paralysis. Leave her alone. Take me, take me. Instead, Silas chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. Very well, Elias, as you wish. He lunged at me, his hand outstretched. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable. But then, everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed, my head throbbing, my body aching. Sarah was sitting beside me, her hand holding mine. She looked exhausted, but relieved. You're awake, she said, her voice trembling. Thank God. What happened? I asked, my voice hoarse. You collapsed, she said. You were mumbling something about a monster, about a promise. I called 911. Silas, I whispered. He's real. He's not just in my head. Sarah squeezed my hand. I don't know what you saw, Elias, but it wasn't real. It was just a hallucination, a breakdown. I wanted to believe her. I really did, but I knew the truth. Silas was real, and he wasn't gone. He was just waiting. The doctors kept me in the hospital for a few days, running tests, monitoring my mental state. They said I was suffering from severe anxiety and sleep deprivation. They prescribed more medication. They suggested more therapy. I played along, pretending to be better, pretending to believe their explanations. But inside, I was terrified. Finally, they released me. Sarah took me back to my apartment. It felt different, colder, more empty. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, my mind racing. I kept seeing Silas's face, his horrifying grin, his empty eyes. Around 3 a.m., I heard a noise, a faint scratching sound coming from the hallway. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. Sarah was asleep beside me, oblivious to the danger. The scratching sound grew louder, closer. It was coming from the door. I reached for the lamp on my nightstand, my hand trembling. I switched it on. The light flooded the room. The scratching stopped. I held my breath, listening. Silence. I slowly got out of bed and walked to the door. I peered through the peephole. Nothing. I hesitated, then unlocked the door and opened it. The hallway was empty. But there, on the floor, was a single black feather. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. It was cold, impossibly cold. I looked up and down the hallway, searching for any sign of Silas. Nothing. But then, I heard it. A whisper so faint it was almost imperceptible. I'm here, Elias. The whisper seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It echoed in my head, reverberated in my bones. I turned around, my eyes darting frantically. And then I saw it. A shadow on the wall. Not just any shadow. A long, distorted shadow, stretching across the wall, its shape impossibly wrong. The shadow of Silas. It grew larger, darker, consuming the light. And then, from the depths of the shadow, I heard his voice, clear and resonant, filled with malevolent glee. "We have so much to catch up on." He stepped out of the darkness and smiled at me, and then he said my name, and this time I knew it wasn't just in my head.